Welcome to another episode of Wirewheel's Privacy Rollup, a weekly recap of newsworthy privacy updates from our CPO, Rick Buck. How are you doing today, Rick?
I'm great, Janine. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Sounds like there's been some activity around the new SECs, some things that are coming soon, especially around Privacy Shield and the replacement that's on the horizon. Can you tell us a little bit more about the talks between the EU and the US regarding Privacy Shield?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe, but it's been almost a year since the European Court of Justice made the decision in the Schrems 2 case. As we all know, some of the things that resulted in that were the invalidation of the Privacy Shield program and the European contractual clause, standard contractual clauses, and binding corporate rules were called into question, right? And as we all know, those are the adequacy, some of the adequacy provisions for being able to transfer data outside of the EU. It's a big deal for companies to be able to legally transfer data to and from Europe. And so a solution needs to be presented and supported as soon as they possibly can. The good news is there's been energy around that. In November, the Europeans released some draft language around the SECs, and as early as last week, the Europeans and the United States both said that they were intensifying conversations around moving forward with the Privacy Shield program. The good news is that the standard contractual clauses are probably going to see some clarity sooner than the Privacy Shield program. But I think we're making progress on both. Last week in an IAPP online conference, the EU Commission for International Data Flows and Protection, Bruno Gencarelli, said that they are working actively to finalize standard contractual clauses language, and that it'll be adopted within short order. They are focused on a couple things. You know, it's been 10 years since the original SCCs were written, or the last version of the SCCs were written, and a lot's changed in that time.
Definitely.
And so, you know, they're working very hard to have the new language be reflective of where we are today with technology and processing and data flows. And so I think that it is likely we will see new SCCs in relatively short order. The SCCs are moving quickly. A replacement for Privacy Shield still kind of up in the air. I would say that both the United States and the Europeans are very much focused on being able to see a Privacy Shield program reestablished, but we'll see where that goes. You know, I think one of the things that they're working really hard on is, you know, we lost Privacy Shield in the Schrems 2 decision. We lost its older sibling, Safe Harbor, in the Schrems 1 decision. And I don't think either the Americans or the Europeans have any appetite for a Schrems 3 story. I don't think we want to see that. And so they want to make sure that we have now measured twice and now cut once for the next program. So we'll see where all that goes, but it's exciting that they're trying to put this together, and it's an important initiative, and I think we will see some productive news coming out of this discussion in the very near future.
Well, I'll definitely be watching, so I'm interested to definitely hear how that turns out. That's great. All right. So next, actually, as we're all well aware, we've all experienced dramatic changes in the way that we live and work due to COVID-19. So recently understand that Microsoft's Deputy General Counsel, Julie Brill, called for digital transformation, or actually called digital transformation unparalleled at this point. What's the latest on technology, data, trust play, and how trust plays a key role in COVID-19's response?
Yeah, in the last week or so, Julie, who you just mentioned, and Patrice Ettinger, who's the Chief Privacy Officer at Pfizer, did an IAPP summit talking about this exact subject. And let me talk just a little bit about that, because I think they raised some really interesting points. One, hard to believe Shrims was a year ago. 2, hard to believe we've been doing this COVID thing for a year.
Yeah.
And thank goodness we're knocking on the door of maybe having COVID be in our rearview mirror.
Yes.
But COVID did some interesting things for us, right? COVID forced a paradigm shift on the way we interact with business, the way we interact with people, the way we interact with all of our socialization. And we've all hunkered down, as we're doing right now, hunkered down in front of a computer to live our lives.
Right.
And as a result of that, technology has been forced on us, embedded on us in a way that it's never been done before. And that's not something to take lightly in a society in which in the last 15 or so years, technology has just exploded. But paradigm shift in the last year. As a result of this, maybe we've become a little more productive at work, maybe not. Maybe we've been a little more productive about interacting with people. Maybe we've been a little more productive, and we've certainly spent a whole lot more time with our social groups, with our activity groups, with our news groups, with our work groups. Right. But what all that means is that as much as we have used this technology as a tool, this tool is also enabling us to knowingly or not knowingly share a lot of data.
Right.
Right. We're sharing data in the words we say. We're sharing data in the technology that we use to fight things like COVID. We're sharing data and reading news stories about some of the more controversial things that have been happening around the globe in terms of social change and racial injustice and all the things that we have been talking about and worrying about. And it all boils down to data. And people need to understand that data needs to be used and trusted in a way that is usable and trustable, not to be redundant. I think some of the key kind of takeaways that Julie and that Patrice raised is that it's never been more evident. I mean, it's always been a conversation, and I referred to it in our first topic. The Europeans certainly have led the charge on this, and I think we're starting to see wider adoption around the globe on how we harness this, right? So if we look at COVID in particular, the pandemic itself has created an awareness from us that we need to collect and use a whole lot of data. We need to use that data for a bunch of things, right? We need to use it so that we can learn about how this disease works and how we can treat it and how it's mutating and how do we treat it, right? But some of that data is highly confidential. And I think that one of the I think key takeaways from their talk, and I see a lot of movement and energy in this area, is that we need to be a lot more collaborative globally in our governments, in our industry, in our business, to be able to approach the use and collection of data in an honest and responsible way. Whether it's implementing and talking about the whole concept of vaccine passports, or contact tracing, or how are we going to open up schools or offices? How are we going to reopen the economy? What's the data that we're using, anonymized or aggregated or actually identified? And being able to use and collect these data is a really strong thing. It will get us to an endpoint, but we need to use that data and collect that data in a responsible and in an ethical way. And I would say probably the biggest thing is that we're starting to see legislation where companies are putting consumers at the center of that equation, right? We're using, the Europeans did it with GDPR. The Canadians followed suit with their Castle laws. We're seeing it down in Brazil. We're seeing it here in the United States with California and with Virginia. Data that we are collecting and using and making rules for now needs to be used in a safe and a trusted manner. It needs to have transparent, the way we collect this data needs to be transparent. It needs to have control by the user. It needs to have accountability. It needs enforcement mechanisms. And if we do that, we put trust in the technology. We put trust in the data. It's a revolving circle. We need the technology and the data to solve these problems. But if we don't have the right rules in place for the use of these data points, there's all kinds of risk at hand. So again, good news is number one, COVID is starting to rapidly come to an end. That's really the key thing. But more importantly, or just as important, we're starting to see that legislators and industry and business are coming together in a more coherent and cohesive way to tell people about what they're doing with their data, to tell people how to be empowered on making decisions about their data, and to be able to solve some real serious problems around the planet by the use of that data.
And I would agree. And as a consumer, if I put my consumer hat on myself, I have all types of questions on, how the vaccine passports and, how my data is being secured, right? And
very important.
I'm sure, everybody has some questions. So again, another area to definitely watch in the future.
Yep.
Okay, so last topic. I know last week we talked a little bit about what was happening with Florida's HB 969, the data privacy bill. So it sounds like there's some recent news on that front. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the week before last, our friends in Washington struck out on their third attempt for a state privacy bill. And now our friends down in Florida struck out on passing either of the two Senate or House-driven privacy bills that they were introducing.
Wow.
The two bills had some similarities. They had a lot of differences. Probably the key striking point was the issue around having a private right of action. There's sort of opposing thoughts about private right of action. One extreme view is that private right of action puts teeth in the bill and makes people accountable. The other side of private right of action is that it opens the door for just an enormous amount of frivolous lawsuits. And then there's the discussion everywhere in between. The vote came very close. It probably could have gone either way, that Florida ended up passing their law last week, but they couldn't come to terms with it, and so now it is dead in this session. It sounds like they have plans to reintroduce it in the next session in 22. So we'll see where that goes. But yet another state trying to do the right thing. There are more coming. Well, let's see where it all goes.
Yes. It's never a dull moment in that space, is it?
No.
Exciting stuff. All right. Well, I want to thank you for this week's update, Rick. It's definitely always a pleasure. And I'd also like to thank, again, our viewers for turning to WireWheel's weekly privacy roll-up. Do you have any privacy questions you'd like to ask us and have answered? Just reach out to us at marketing@wirewheel.io. And you'll also be able to find the link in this description. So be sure to like this video and subscribe to WireWheel's YouTube channel as well. Again, thank you. And thank you for your time today, Rick.
You're welcome, Janine. Thanks everybody for listening. See you next week.
Thanks.